Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video we're going to be going over my May wrap-up and talking a little bit about the 9 books that I read or listened to in the month of May. I know I'm still so far behind on my wrap-ups. I did get my August TBR out pretty much on time though, so that's definitely a plus. Hopefully by the end of the month I'll be kind of caught up on my wrap-ups and hauls and everything, so my, the booktube staple type videos will be, chronologically kind of like corrected by that point at the end of the month. But yeah, this one I'm kind of dreading just because I hate, if you guys follow like my channel and stuff, I hate editing. I don't really like edit at all, and even though it only takes like 5 seconds to add the books like right here, out of the 9 books there's 8 of them that I don't physically own, and you'll see why in just a second. So I'm just like dreading it, even though it's only going to take, like 10 seconds per book, but it's just like a silly thing of mine. But anyways, I think there's 4 NetGalley books, and then a bunch of other, I'm not sure why I don't own a bunch of them. I think month of May, yeah, I did a bunch of NetGalley books, so they're mostly on my Kindle. And then I did a couple audiobooks just because I had a ton just sort of piling up from sales and everything. So I didn't get a whole lot of like physical reading done, so I only read one of my physical fantasy books. But yeah, let's just get started with the 4 NetGalley books that I finished in the month of May. Alright, the first one is one of my favorites of the year, and it's How to Think Like a Roman Emperor by Donald Robertson. And this is all about the philosophy of, or the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. You guys have probably heard of the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and he's probably the best known sort of Stoic philosopher, at least definitely among the big 3 of himself, Epictetus, and Seneca. But anyways, I really enjoy reading about philosophy. I try to read a lot. I try to read some of it when I can. Definitely slack on it sometimes, but Stoic philosophy is definitely one that I really enjoy learning about and sort of trying to apply to my own life and everything. But this was just an excellent book. It was kind of a mishmash of sort of modern psychology with kind of a biography of Marcus Aurelius, and obviously with heavy doses of sort of Stoic philosophy with a couple little vignettes from the author, kind of all mixed together. And I think it just blended really well to kind of convey sort of the thought processes of Stoic philosophy, especially as probably Marcus Aurelius sort of would have seen the world and everything. And the very last chapter of the book is this long sort of I don't know what you call it, kind of like a monologue, I guess, of how maybe based on like what we know about Marcus Aurelius and his like advocacy of sort of Stoicism, how he sort of viewed his upcoming death, like when he was on his deathbed, maybe like the day before he died and stuff, and his acceptance of his upcoming death. And it was just so beautifully written, both the kind of the combination of Stoic philosophy along with sort of just the, I don't know, just the really good prose of the author himself. I just blended spectacularly, and I can't recommend, especially just like that last chapter, enough for someone who just wants like just a really good like visceral read. Highly encourage you guys to check out that book if Stoic philosophy sounds interesting to you. All right, the next one, I had to write all these down too because like, so many of them have like really long subtitles. Next one is Titan Death, which is the 53rd book in the Horus Heresy series. This one is by Guy Haley, and the subtitle is like one of the best ones in the series for sure. It's The God Machines Cometh. So essentially with Titan Death we have a giant battle between the traitorous forces of Horus and the loyalists of the Emperor, but on Beta Garmin. And what this battle actually ends up being is largely with the Titans, which are these giant super like mech suits that are like 200, 300, 400 feet tall, basically like Gundam style, just like completely insane. But some of the concepts are really cool, and some of the like kind of like underlying plots between like the relationships of some of them between the two sides and how they're maybe related and not related and stuff is kind of like really interesting. Plus there's some weird like cult chaos stuff kind of going on the heretical side. Obviously it's just definitely some really macabre stuff. There's like one really eerie cult macabre scene which was pretty cool to read, but it was just very like eerie and strange. But yeah, like I said, it's basically just giant mega Gundams who's fighting each other, so that sounds something interesting. Definitely go check that out. And let's see, another one is Moneyland by Oliver Bullough. And the subtitle is The Inside Story of the Crooks and Kleptocrats Who Rule the World. And this just like was an uber depressing read. It's all about sort of the millionaire and billionaires who just sort of run everything behind the scenes in the world, and how they're able to get away with sort of keeping their money. Like, for example, he sort of describes how all the hidden, maybe not hidden is probably not the right word, the kind of dark money, I guess, of the world, like stuff like that are in offshore bank accounts or Swiss accounts, things like that, things people can do with like diplomatic immunity, how people go about with like tax evasion and stuff and pretty much succeed with it, and how a lot of time, like when money crosses like sort of international lines, there's nothing really the original country can really do about it, this and that, failed states and, where the money goes there and everything. But it was kind of just depressing in the sense like these like super like rich people can just sort of get away with everything because, they have money and they can do these sort of things. So yeah, but it is sort of enlightening on how, like I said, for example, like, like Swiss bank accounts or banks in the Cayman Islands and stuff, and all these like little tiny countries that have, like especially like out in the Caribbean and stuff, why these offshore accounts in these countries are so powerful, even though there's like 100,000 people like living on the island or something. That's like it. But technically they're like a sovereign state and they can make up their own like banking laws and this and that. So it was definitely enlightening on that, because you always sort of hear about stuff like that, kind of like either in the news or, in like like thrillers and mysteries and everything. So it definitely was enlightening, but like I said, kind of depressing, and how the rich people just sort of get away with all that craziness. And then the last NetGalley book that I read was probably my favorite, definitely my favorite science book of the year so far, and it's Wild at Heart, America's Turbulent Relationship with Nature from Exploitation to Redemption by Alice Outwater. And what this book does is, especially regarding the Western world, but America in particular, sort of how we have, over the past, millennia and 500 years or so, but then in particular the last like century or so, how we have kind of wrecked and exploited and destroyed nature. And then the last two or three chapters where, some things we're finally doing right. They make amends for like everything we screwed up in the past like 300 years. Obviously there's still a long way to go, but there is definitely like maybe not a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're at least like doing some stuff right. And like I said, just doing a few things here and there that are actually positive and actually working. For example, like one of the big ones that I really enjoyed reading about was sort of the environmental impacts of actually removing a lot of like the obsolete or out of date hydroelectric dams, and just other kinds of dams and stuff that allow like the fish to go back upstream, and it's sort of a lot of the fish populations are rebounding, things like that. But like I said, this book overall goes through different ways that people have sort of connected with nature in both good and bad ways. For, like I said, overexploitation with, for example, what like what am I thinking of? The passenger pigeons or carrier pigeons. They used to be like in the bazillion, like literally like the millions and billions, and how they went extinct in just like a generation or two, just from like over hunting, just because it became like a sort of a fad thing and make a quick buck in the late 1800s. But different, each chapter kind of was like a different take on our relationship with nature. Like one was, for example, our relationship with nature in regards to medicine. Stuff like that was just really cool. Like lots of little historical vignettes, a lot of science vignettes too. Just a really good mishmash of philosophy and science and history. I really enjoy kind of like history science combinations. Obviously, history would be my favorite genre. Life science is my favorite like science genre. So when they like mix up together, it just turns out really well. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Highly encourage you guys to check this out if like conservationism or nature and kind of like our use of nature is something that you're interested in reading about. All right, now I have a bunch of books that I either listen to or don't have anymore. And like I said, I think 2 or 3 of them like I said, I had just like a bunch of like audiobooks just hanging out in the library that I just wanted to get to some of them at some point. And I think my theme for the month almost was like nature. I think I read like 4 or 5 on nature or kind of like biology, stuff like that. This first one is actually kind of a life science anthropology type book, and it's Who We Are and How We Got Here, Ancient DNA and the New Science of the Human Past by David Reich. And this was sort of an, I was kind of hoping it was going to be about like sort of human anthropology, human evolution with the DNA and stuff, which it kind of was, but I've just never been really successful with anthropology books. If you have a really good sort of human evolution anthropology type book, leave a comment down below so I can go check it out, because I've read like a handful. Every anthropology book I've picked has just been like, meh, pretty much. So yeah, if you know of a good one in particular, definitely let me know so I can go check it out. I don't know, this book to me was just really boring. I don't know if it's because I listened to it. I think it was on sale and I picked it up, but it just wasn't great. Like one of the things that irritated me about quite a bit, and he even admits up front, a lot of the research is going to be from my own laboratory here in the United States or whatever. But it's my laboratory and my research and everything. He's like, and I can't help that because a lot of the research at other places either isn't good enough or it's just not there and they just haven't caught up and this and that. And it's not their fault and everything. But it just came across kind of, even if he's technically right on a lot of things, it was just kind of like, I don't know, it just came off the wrong way, at least to me. It probably really wasn't a big deal, but it was just kind of, I don't know, I guess I don't like hearing, my scientific experiment, my research, my lab, this and that. I don't know, it just didn't come across very good. But like I said, it was pretty boring overall. I didn't really learn a whole lot. It was pretty much the thrust of the book is, it's a lot more confusing than we take it to be, and there's really not it's all kind of blurry, which I thought that was kind of what we all thought anyway. It's not tons of just individual races and everything that have gone back, bazillions of years and everything. But I don't know, it just was kind of a middle of the road, kind of really science heavy, boring-ish anthropology book based on the DNA, and I was just like, whatever. Alright, another nature book was The Beekeepers Lament by Hannah Nordhaus, and I forgot to write the subtitle down, so it'll be right there somewhere. And this is this was an interesting book, and it's all about, especially the American, the wild honeybees and everything, and how they've pretty much, I guess I didn't even realize that, most feral honeybee colonies are pretty much extinct, wild feral honeybees are pretty much done. And then even with domesticated bees and everything, farmed bees and stuff like that, learning about kind of the colony collapse disorder, which I had heard about in the news and stuff, and I guess I didn't realize how widespread and prevalent it was. But it's kind of some things that we need to learn about it, because it's still really confusing, and it's kind of like the Bronze Age collapse. We have a bunch of ideas that must be contributing somehow, but we're not really sure the right formula that's actually causing it to have whole colonies just completely get destroyed over a season and everything. But it was interesting learning about other things, for example, honeybee queens can literally be manufactured, probably is not the right word, but they can be raised and grown, almost factory style, I guess, in-house, based on the way queens are developed naturally in the hive and everything, by feeding them a different sort of food stuff that the bees produce in the wild. And by doing that, you can almost just mass produce just queens to start new colonies and everything. So I found that really interesting. And then I liked about this book too was that one particular bee farmer who's kind of really weird and eclectic was kind of the main storyline to advance a lot of these tangents of the rest of the book. And he was kind of just a really interesting fellow who quoted Greek poet Homer and all that kind of stuff. So it was, I don't know, it was just a really good read on honeybees if you're interested in bees. And then another nature book. Let's see, that's how many nature books, I guess. Well, the DNA book was a science book. The bee book was a science book. This one's going to be a science book. Oh, Wild at Heart. So yeah, 4 nature sciences books. So yeah, I did read quite a bit of them. This one is the short one that I think I just saw on Scribd, just spur of the moment. It's The Revolutionary Genius of Plants by Stefano Mancuso. And I've never heard of this author or this book, but I just kind of picked it up because it was a short listen and everything. But he's an Italian scientist who just super into botany and plants and everything, and sort of the engineering and the really hardcore stuff behind plants. I found this really interesting. He was able to by studying plant systems and everything, sort of how different kinds of robots and artificial intelligence can be developed better based on more of like a plant root structure rather than almost like a human. Like a lot of times AI is developed sort of with like a human brain kind of in mind as sort of the central like nervous system of, the processing unit or whatever. But he was able to show, there are other systems that are sort of based on like loosely interconnected web of like nodules, sort of like in a root system of the plant, which I thought was really cool. He made like this big giant like ecosystem, like jellyfish. It's called like the jellyfish thing because it looks sort of like a jellyfish, where plants can be sort of grown out on the ocean, just like free floating, which I thought was really cool. And it's essentially self-sustaining once it's like brought up and started. So without any extra input, you can literally just like grow plants, at least on a small scale right now. And it was kind of depressing too, reading about how it definitely can work because like the prototypes have been working really well, but there's just not been funding from like any big players and stuff to, help kind of bring it to the next tier or the next level in production and stuff. So that was kind of depressing as well. But like, he's just really interested in pretty much all aspects of plants, and even how different plant structures have, shaped different architectural styles over time and everything. Just I highly enjoy it if you are interested in like botany or like gardening, anything that I think you would enjoy that book as well. All right, I think we got two left. And the last one that I don't actually have here is Late Antiquity, which is actually one of the great courses that I listened to from the teaching company that I listened to. Been trying to do one a month, and I've been doing pretty good this year, even though I think it's August, so it's 8. I think I've done like 6, I think, so far this year, so that's really cool. This one is Late Antiquity by Thomas Noble, and I think this one has a subtitle, Crisis and Transformation. But this was a 36 lecture course, each one being about half an hour. But Late Antiquity is probably, if I really was like, when push came to shove, it's probably either tied for first or is my second favorite historical era. And in this course, Late Antiquity is essentially from the age of Diocletian, which is the early 300 or very late 3rd century and early 300s CE, down to about the reign of Charlemagne around late 700s, early 800s, that kind of formation period in the West. And one of the big thrust, obviously, of the book is sort of the transformation of the West from classical Rome, we have, the height of the Roman Empire, to through the early Middle Ages, and that's sort of what Late Antiquity is. And you have a lot of different things going on, different cultural changes, like really heavy religious changes in the West, obviously with like the spread of Christianity and the spread of Islam in the Mediterranean world in particular. Different empires, kingdoms and empires that take the place of Rome, where we have Byzantium, the Caliphates, and the Frankish Empire under Charlemagne, and how they're all sort of different, but they all kind of spring from Rome, or either Rome or, well, the Western Roman Empire, and I guess the Eastern Roman Empire, you could basically say it became Byzantium, for example. But how they all have different relationships with the Roman past, but they're essentially medieval by the time we get to that point in time, obviously. So I just thought it was really cool. Like I said, I really enjoyed this era because it is like, it's the Dark Ages or whatever, but it's really not as dark as they make it out to be. I just think it's kind of a like the early Middle Ages and Late Antiquity, sort of a neglected time period in history, but it's just, like I said, really transformative, especially for the Western world, and just highly encourage you guys to kind of look into Late Antiquity and everything, if that sounds interesting. And then lastly, a book I actually physically read, we have The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I've read all 4 of the books so far, though I got to read the Book of Merlin, which is sort of like a posthumous book 5 of this kind of Arthurian cycle. In the month of May, I read the second book, which was, why am I drawing a blank? Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I wrote it down. Oh, The Witch in the Wood. This was probably my least favorite of the 4 books I read so far. Heavily sort of based on the Knights from Orkney, so like Sir Gawain and stuff. And Agravain, but I thought it was still good, just not as good as the other 4-ish books that I read. Might is Right becomes like really, really prominent. Not that it's not prominent in like the other books. But it's kind of before Lancelot's story is introduced in the 3rd book, and the main thrust is Arthur is sort of establishing himself as sort of, he is, the High King of Europe and or High King of Europe, High King of Britain and everything, and he is, trying to sweep the old order under the rug of might is right, kind of the old way of chivalry where, knights would just go around bullying everyone and fighting each other and stuff, and, the formation of the Knights of the Round Table, things like that. Like I said, still really enjoyable. I love sort of the wit and the lyricism of the work, the whimsy kind of meshed with the somber sobriety as well. Highly encourage you guys to check it out, especially if you like old school fantasy, or if you like anything Arthurian. Like T.H. White is pretty much a must read. So yeah, highly encourage you guys to check that one out as well. So there you guys go. Those are the 9 books that I read or listened to or whatever in the month of May. Tell me what you guys thought. I'm not going to ask you to remember what your favorite book in May is unless you know it off the top of your head. Leave a comment down below about that. But yeah, thank you for watching. Just remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that. Check out my Twitter, Instagram, and also my Etsy shop if you want to support the channel. If you like cool wooden bookmarks, anything like that, definitely go check that out. You might find something you like and it supports the channel and whatnot. But yeah, whatever you guys end up reading, always remember, read victoriously.